Chinese spy balloon hovers menacingly over the United States. The team of investigators uncovers a plot that threatens national security. With danger lurking around every corner, they embark on a dangerous mission to stop the Chinese operatives and prevent a catastrophic attack. As they race against time to unravel the plot, the team must overcome impossible odds and face their deepest fears. But in the end, they know that their mission is too important to fail. This is the story of the Chinese spy balloon and the team that risked everything to stop it. In the summer of 2022, the people of the United States were captivated by a strange object in the sky. It was a balloon shaped like a giant red lantern, floating silently over the heartland of the country. At first, people thought it was a novelty, a strange new kind of hot air balloon perhaps, or an experimental craft from some unknown government agency. But as days turned into weeks, and the balloon remained aloft, suspicions began to grow. Rumors began to circulate that the balloon was a Chinese spy device, monitoring the movements of American military and industrial installations from high above. Some people even claimed to have seen small drones launched from the balloon, conducting surveillance missions over sensitive areas. The government denied the claims, insisting that the balloon was a harmless weather research tool, but the public remained skeptical. As the weeks wore on, people began to notice strange occurrences happening in areas near where the balloon had been spotted. There were reports of break-ins at research facilities and industrial plants, with sensitive information stolen or damaged. Some people even reported seeing Chinese-looking men lurking in their neighborhoods, taking pictures and gathering data. It seemed as if the balloon was part of a larger, coordinated espionage effort, designed to undermine American security and steal its secrets. The government was slow to respond to the growing threat. They hesitated to act, fearing that any aggressive moves might escalate the situation and lead to open conflict. But as reports of thefts and espionage continued to mount, the public grew restless. Angry protests erupted in cities across the country, with people demanding action against the spy balloon and the foreign power behind it. Finally, after weeks of pressure, the government authorized a strike against the balloon. Fighter jets were scrambled to intercept the device, and a team of Special Forces soldiers was dispatched to board it and retrieve any data or equipment they could find. The mission was risky, but it was deemed necessary to protect American security and send a message to those who would try to threaten it. As the fighters closed in on the balloon, they were surprised to find that it had moved higher and faster than they had anticipated. It seemed to be trying to evade them, as if it knew they were coming. The pilots pursued it, but it was like chasing a ghost in the sky, always just out of reach. And then, suddenly, it was gone. The balloon disappeared into thin air, leaving the fighters and the soldiers empty-handed. They searched for any trace of it, but there was nothing to be found. It was as if the balloon had never existed in the first place, but the damage had already been done. The thefts and espionage continued, and suspicions of Chinese involvement only grew stronger. The spy balloon had become a symbol of the growing tensions between the two countries, a reminder that even something as innocuous as a floating red lantern could hold deadly secrets. And as the world watched and waited, it seemed that the situation was only going to get worse. Despite the disappearance of the spy balloon, the American government remained vigilant. They knew that the Chinese had sophisticated technology and had been working on developing their espionage capabilities for years. There was no telling when they would try to strike again, and so the government increased security measures at sensitive sites across the country. Meanwhile, the Chinese government denied any involvement in the spy balloon incident, insisting that it was a weather research tool and that the accusations were baseless. But rumors continued to circulate, and tensions between the two countries rose to new heights. One day, a Chinese diplomat arrived at the American embassy in Beijing with a proposal. He claimed that the Chinese government had nothing to do with the spy balloon and that they were just as concerned about the situation as the Americans were. He suggested that the two countries work together to investigate the incident and find out who was behind it. The American officials were skeptical but intrigued. They knew that cooperation with the Chinese could be beneficial, but they also knew that there were risks involved. They decided to accept the proposal, and a joint investigation team was established. The investigation was long and difficult. The team scoured through data and analyzed the equipment recovered from the failed mission. They interviewed witnesses and conducted surveillance operations. Slowly but surely, they began to piece together a picture of what had happened. It turned out that the Chinese were indeed behind the spy balloon, but not in the way that the Americans had thought. The balloon was part of a larger operation to test new stealth technology, which the Chinese military was planning to use in their upcoming campaign to take control of Taiwan. The Americans were shocked by this revelation. They had known that the Chinese were preparing for a conflict with Taiwan, but they had never expected them to be so bold as to use spy balloons to gather intelligence on American military installations. The investigation team quickly returned to the U.S., eager to share their findings with the government. But as they arrived, they realized that something was wrong. The streets were empty, and the buildings were dark. There was no sign of life anywhere. They hurried to the White House, hoping to find some answers there, but it was locked and deserted. As they stood in shock and confusion, a message flashed across their phones. It was a video message from the Chinese government, announcing that they had launched a devastating cyber attack on the United States. They had disabled all electronic systems and communications, leaving the country defenseless. The investigation team realized with horror that they were the last Americans left standing. They had to act quickly if they wanted to save their country from complete destruction. But how could they fight back against an enemy that was so technologically advanced? The team knew that they had to find a way to re-establish communications with the rest of the world. They set out on a perilous journey, traveling through the heartland of the country, trying to evade the Chinese patrols that were searching for them. They encountered many challenges along the way, including hostile locals, harsh weather, and dangerous wildlife. But they persisted, driven by the knowledge that their mission was crucial to the survival of their nation. As they approached the West Coast, they saw a glimmer of hope on the horizon. They spotted a U.S. Navy ship sailing towards them through the fog. It was the USS Carl Vinson, and it had been sent to investigate the disappearance of the investigation team. The team breathed a sigh of relief as they boarded the ship. They were safe for now, but they knew that they had a long road ahead of them. They had to find a way to break through the Chinese blockade and re-establish communications with the rest of the world. They had to find a way to fight back against an enemy that was far more powerful than they had ever imagined. The investigation team knew that they had a daunting task ahead of them. The Chinese had the upper hand, with their advanced technology and resources, but the team was determined to do whatever it took to save their country. The team quickly got to work, analyzing all the data they had collected during the investigation. They realized that the Chinese had used a sophisticated malware program to carry out the cyber attack. They also discovered that the malware had a unique signature that they could use to track down its source. The team coordinated with the USS Carl Vinson, which had a team of highly trained cybersecurity experts on board. They worked together to develop a plan to track down the source of the malware and shut it down. The plan involved launching a covert operation to infiltrate a Chinese data center located in a remote part of the country. The team would have to navigate through hostile territory, avoid detection by Chinese patrols, and hack into the data center systems to shut down the malware. The team knew that the mission was risky, but they had no other choice. They were America's last hope, and they were determined to succeed. The team spent weeks preparing for the mission, training and strategizing. They studied maps, developed disguises, and practiced their hacking skills. They also had to make some difficult decisions about who would go on the mission. It was a high-stakes operation, and they couldn't afford any mistakes. Finally, the day of the mission arrived. The team boarded a specially modified aircraft that would fly them deep into Chinese territory. They wore camouflage suits and carried a variety of tools and weapons to help them complete the mission. As they flew over the rugged terrain, They could see Chinese patrols and installations scattered throughout the landscape. The tension in the aircraft was palpable, but the team remained focused on their mission. When they arrived at the data center, they quickly got to work. They used their hacking skills to bypass the security systems and gain access to the network. They traced the malware signature back to its source and found that it was being controlled by a team of Chinese cyber warfare experts. The team worked quickly to shut down the malware, but the Chinese experts were not going to give up without a fight. They launched a counterattack, using their own hacking skills to try to stop the Americans from disabling the malware. The team found themselves in a fierce cyber battle, with each side trying to outsmart the other. It was a tense and nerve-wracking situation, but the Americans refused to back down. Finally, after what felt like hours, the team succeeded in shutting down the malware. They let out a collective sigh of relief as the Chinese data center went dark. The team quickly gathered their equipment and made their escape, slipping past Chinese patrols and disappearing into the night. They returned to the USS Carl Vinson, where they were greeted with cheers and applause. The team had done the impossible. They had saved America from complete destruction and had successfully fought back against a technologically advanced enemy. But their victory was short-lived. The Chinese government was furious and vowed revenge. Tensions between the two countries remained high, and the threat of a new conflict loomed on the horizon. As the investigation team prepared to return to the U.S., they knew that they had made a difference. They had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, Americans could still come together to fight for their country. But the question remained, would it be enough? Would America be able to withstand the might of the Chinese military? Or was this just the beginning of a new and even more devastating conflict? Only time would tell, and as the investigation team headed back home, they knew that the future was uncertain. But they also knew that they had each other, and that they would do whatever it took to protect their country. As they flew back to the U.S., the investigation team couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. They had just exposed a major threat to national security, but they knew that there were still many more threats lurking in the shadows. The team realized that they had to remain vigilant, that they had to be ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. They knew that the Chinese government would not rest until they had exacted their revenge, and that they would stop at nothing to achieve their goals. As the investigation team landed on U.S. soil, they were greeted by their families and loved ones. They were hailed as heroes, and their bravery and determination were celebrated throughout the country. But the team knew that they couldn't rest on their laurels. They had to stay focused, to continue their work, and to remain vigilant in the face of the ever-present threat of cyber warfare. The Chinese spy balloon had been a wake-up call, a stark reminder that America was vulnerable, that the country's enemies were growing stronger every day. But the investigation team also knew that America was strong, that its people were resilient and determined, and that they would never give up in the face of adversity. As the team returned to their offices, they knew that there was much work to be done. They would continue to monitor the skies, to track down any new threats, and to protect their country from harm. The future was uncertain, and there were many challenges ahead, but the investigation team remained steadfast in their commitment to their country and to each other. And as they settled back into their routine, they knew that they would face whatever came their way with courage, determination, and an unwavering sense of purpose. The end. Or is it? The investigation team knew that their work was far from over, and that there were still many more threats lurking in the shadows. As they prepared to face the challenges ahead, they knew that the future was uncertain, and that there would be many more battles to come. But they also knew that they were not alone, that they had each other, and that they would stand together, no matter what the future held.